The cul-de-sac of Maple Drive was the kind of place where every blade of grass seemed perfectly manicured, every rose bush strategically placed for maximum curb appeal. Large houses, built with a tasteful uniformity that spoke of expensive architects, lined the street. It was an affluent American suburb, quiet and exclusive, where the hum of lawnmowers on a Saturday morning was often the loudest sound you'd hear. This wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a statement, a testament to success, a place where life unfolded with a certain predictable ease for its residents. Then came the Davises. They moved into the newly renovated house at the end of the street, pulling up in a shiny black SUV packed with boxes that hinted at an organized, upscale life. Mark and Sharon Davis were, on the surface, perfectly pleasant. They smiled easily, waved to neighbors, and hosted a small, tasteful housewarming party a few weeks after unpacking. But beneath the veneer of suburban charm, there was a subtle snobbery, a quiet confidence in their own perceived superiority. They talked about their careers, their children's prestigious schools, and their plans for the garden with an air that suggested they were always assessing, always judging. Appearances mattered to the Davises, perhaps more than anything else. Their home was immaculate, their cars always spotless, and their children always impeccably dressed. They believed implicitly in a social order, and they were quite sure of their place at the very top of it. Across the street lived Mr. Henderson, an older gentleman who had been a fixture in the neighborhood for decades. He was well respected, known for his kindness and his quiet, unassuming demeanor. Mr. Henderson was a man of routines, and one of his most cherished possessions was a vintage Rolls-Royce, a gleaming silver cloud that often sat parked in his driveway. It wasn't just a car, it was a piece of history, a work of art, kept in immaculate condition, polished regularly until its chrome gleamed like a mirror. People often slowed down to admire it, a tangible link to a different era. Crucial to Mr. Henderson's daily life was Elena, his longtime maid. She was a hard-working single mother, always efficient, always respectful, and always there, a steady presence in Mr. Henderson's home. She drove an older, reliable sedan, practical and unassuming, pulling into Mr. Henderson's driveway a few times a week, her modest clothes reflecting a life of quiet dedication. The Davises, with their keen eye for detail and their quick judgments, noticed Elena immediately. They saw her arrive in her simple car, disappear into Mr. Henderson's house, and re-emerge hours later. To them, she was simply the maid, a service provider, part of the invisible workforce that kept their world running smoothly. Her humble attire and practical vehicle solidified their immediate assessment. She was an outsider, someone who occupied a lower rung on their unspoken social ladder. They also noticed the Rolls-Royce, of course. It was impossible not to. They admired its classic lines, its undeniable luxury, and secretly wondered about Mr. Henderson's past. What kind of life allowed one to own such a magnificent machine? They saw it as a symbol of old money, of established wealth, something they aspired to, perhaps even envied a little. The Rolls-Royce was more than just a car. It was a statement. For Mr. Henderson, it was a link to his youth, to a time when he built his success, a testament to a life well lived. For the Davises, it was a benchmark of status, a gleaming trophy of achievement. They viewed it through the lens of their own ambition, a possession that signified a certain level of arrival. This car, in their minds, belonged to a world they understood, a world of privilege and accomplishment. Elena, and anyone like her, was simply a part of the background, there to serve that world, not to partake in its luxuries. This was the subtle class divide, a silent agreement in their minds about who belonged where. They saw themselves at the top, and anyone performing service roles like Elena was, by definition, beneath them. As weeks turned into months, the Davises' observations became more focused. They started noticing Elena's daughter, Sophia. A young woman, maybe late teens or early 20s, Sophia would occasionally visit Mr. Henderson's home. Sometimes she'd arrive with Elena, sometimes on her own. The Davises saw her interacting comfortably with Mr. Henderson, a familiarity that struck them as odd. They'd see her laughing with him in the garden, or sometimes even sitting in the Rolls-Royce when it was parked in the driveway, not driving it, just sitting, perhaps waiting for her mother. This sparked their initial suspicion, a faint flicker of unease. Why was this young woman, the maid's daughter, so comfortable around Mr. Henderson's prized possession? Why was she so often at his house? Their internal narrative about Elena and Sophia began to solidify. They were outsiders, people who didn't quite fit the pristine image of Maple Drive. And outsiders, in the Davises' world, were often looking for an angle, looking to take advantage. They started building a story in their minds, a narrative based purely on appearance, on their preconceived notions of social status, and on the quiet hum of their own subtle prejudices. The maid's daughter, in their eyes, just didn't belong near the magnificent car, or so frequently at the home of a wealthy elderly man. Something, they decided, was definitely amiss. They didn't have any real evidence, just a growing feeling, a gut instinct born of their own biases, and that, for the Davises, was often enough. Elena's dedication to Mr. Henderson was deep, built over years of shared moments and quiet trust. She wasn't just his maid, she was a steadfast presence, a part of his daily life. She knew his routines, his preferences, and when he needed an extra cup of tea, or just someone to listen. Mr. Henderson, a man who had outlived most of his immediate family, had come to rely on Elena not just for keeping his house in order, but for a sense of companionship. She often went beyond her job description, checking on him even on her days off, a gesture born not of obligation, but of genuine care. For Elena, Mr. Henderson was more than an employer. He was almost like family, a kind and generous man who had always treated her with respect. This bond extended to Sophia as well. Sophia, Elena's daughter, was a bright and respectful young woman, currently navigating her first year of college. She had grown up around Mr. Henderson, seeing him as a benevolent grandfather figure. He, in turn, had taken a keen interest in her education, often asking about her studies and offering words of encouragement. He believed in her potential, seeing a spark that reminded him of his younger self. Sophia had a genuine affection for Mr. Henderson, finding in him a mentor who always had time for her questions and dreams. She would often help her mother with tasks around the house, especially during school breaks, and would spend time chatting with Mr. Henderson, sharing stories and laughter. Meanwhile, the Davises continued their escalating observations. From their manicured lawn, they had a clear view of Mr. Henderson's property. They noticed Sophia's frequent presence, sometimes arriving in Elena's modest car, other times walking, often carrying books or a backpack. They saw her, through their living room window, moving with a familiarity that they found increasingly unsettling. To them, these were not signs of a warm, intergenerational friendship, but rather hints of something more calculated, more opportunistic. They interpreted her comfortable demeanor as undue familiarity, a young woman overstepping her bounds. Every wave, every shared laugh, was filtered through their lens of suspicion. Whispers began to circulate, subtle at first, then growing bolder. Mrs. Davis, during her morning walks or at neighborhood gatherings, would drop casual remarks. "Isn't it unusual how often Mr. Henderson has visitors?" she'd say, or, "I do hope he's not being taken advantage of, being so elderly and all." She framed her observations as concerns for Mr. Henderson's well-being, a facade that barely concealed her true judgments. She spoke of strange happenings at his house, hinting at activity that didn't quite fit the quiet cul-de-sac. The Davises were careful not to outright accuse, but they planted seeds of doubt, letting their neighbors connect the dots in a way that suited their own narrative. The Rolls-Royce, as always, remained a focal point. It was a beacon of wealth, a symbol they couldn't ignore. They saw Sophia near it more often. Sometimes she'd be wiping a bit of dust off its gleaming chrome, a task Mr. Henderson sometimes asked her to do, teaching her how to care for the vintage vehicle. Other times, she'd simply be standing by it, admiring its lines, perhaps dreaming of a future beyond her current struggles. The Davises watched these moments, their suspicions hardening. This young woman, the maid's daughter, was becoming too comfortable with something that clearly wasn't hers. It felt like an encroachment, an appropriation of the symbols of their world. One particular afternoon, the Davises were enjoying tea on their patio when they saw Sophia in the driveway. She had a soft cloth in her hand, meticulously polishing the Rolls-Royce. The sun glinted off the polished surface as she worked, her movements careful and deliberate. This was a routine task Mr. Henderson often entrusted to her, a small way to involve her in the care of his beloved car. But to the Davises, it was a clear signal. They saw it as an act of possessiveness, almost as if she were staking a claim. It was an outward display, in their minds, of someone preparing to take what wasn't rightfully hers. The scene confirmed their worst fears, igniting a fresh wave of indignation. Mrs. Davis, emboldened by this latest evidence, decided it was time for a direct interaction. Later that day, as Elena was leaving Mr. Henderson's house, Mrs. Davis casually walked towards her. "Good afternoon, Elena," she chirped, a forced pleasantness in her tone. "Just wanted to say hello. We've been noticing a lot of activity around Mr. Henderson's lately. It's good to keep an eye on things in the neighborhood, isn't it? Especially with strangers around." Her gaze flickered towards Elena's car, then back to the Rolls-Royce. Elena, always polite, offered a small smile. "Mr. Henderson has his routine, Mrs. Davis, and Sophia helps out sometimes. No strangers, just family friends." Elena dismissed the implications, seeing it as mere nosiness, a common trait in affluent neighborhoods. She didn't fully grasp the depth of Mrs. Davis's underlying accusation. However, Mrs. Davis interpreted Elena's calm demeanor differently. She saw it as evasiveness, a sign of guilt. Elena's matter-of-fact tone only fueled Mrs. Davis's conviction that something was indeed amiss, that Elena was trying to cover up something untoward. The misunderstanding deepened, each side viewing the situation through entirely different lenses. The Davises, convinced that Mr. Henderson was being taken advantage of, and fueled by their own sense of superiority and a perceived duty to the neighborhood, decided they needed to intervene more directly. They felt a growing sense of responsibility to protect their elderly neighbor from what they believed was a subtle, insidious plot. Their decision was made. They would act, and soon. The next morning, a soft, warm light filled Mr. Henderson's living room. He sat in his favorite armchair, a book open on his lap, but his eyes were on Sophia. He had a special request for her. He needed to attend an important event, something he usually drove himself to, but today he felt a little tired. He trusted Sophia. He trusted her driving skills, and he genuinely enjoyed her company. This was a rare occasion, a moment he cherished, and he asked her if she would do him the honor of driving him in his beloved Rolls-Royce. Sophia's face lit up. She was thrilled, honored by his trust. It wasn't just a car to her. It was a symbol of Mr. Henderson's life, his history, and his kindness. She promised to take the utmost care. She spent the better part of the morning preparing. She meticulously cleaned the car, not just a quick wipe down, but a thorough polish, making sure every chrome surface gleamed. She checked the tires, the oil, the water, treating the vintage vehicle with a reverence that spoke volumes about her respect for Mr. Henderson and his possessions. She even looked up the route to his event, wanting to make sure they arrived on time and without any issues. She wanted everything to be perfect. As she worked, she imagined the drive, the quiet hum of the engine, the conversations they would share. It was more than just a task. It was an experience she looked forward to. Meanwhile, across the street, the Davises were particularly watchful. They had decided to be extra vigilant, convinced that their earlier observations pointed to something significant about to happen. Mrs. Davis had her binoculars ready, occasionally peering through them at Mr. Henderson's driveway. Mr. Davis was on his porch, supposedly reading the newspaper, but his eyes constantly darted towards their neighbor's house. Their vigilance paid off, in their minds, when they saw Sophia emerge from the house, key in hand. She walked directly to the Rolls-Royce, opened the driver's side door, and slid into the seat. A few minutes later, Mr. Henderson, dressed in a sharp suit, emerged and settled into the passenger seat. Then, with a quiet rumble, Sophia backed the car out of the driveway and slowly drove away. From the Davises' vantage point, they only saw Sophia driving the car away from the property. They didn't see Mr. Henderson's warm smile or the comfortable way he settled into the passenger seat. They didn't hear his cheerful conversation or Sophia's respectful replies. All they saw was a young woman of modest means, the maid's daughter, at the wheel of a luxury car that, in their minds, she had no business driving. Their minds immediately jumped to conclusions. This was it. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the confirmation of their deepest biases. She was stealing the car. Perhaps she was taking advantage of Mr. Henderson's age or a moment of weakness. The image of her, a young woman who didn't belong, driving such a valuable vehicle, confirmed every preconceived notion they held. Mrs. Davis, in particular, became extremely agitated. Her face flushed, and her hands trembled as she called her husband, who was still on the porch. "She's doing it, Robert. She's taking it. I just saw her drive away in the Rolls-Royce with Mr. Henderson in it. He must be incapacitated, or she's forcing him. The brazenness of it." Her voice was a frantic whisper, filled with what she perceived as righteous indignation. Mr. Davis, convinced by his wife's frantic report and his own existing notions, didn't hesitate. He immediately called the police. He reported a theft in progress, describing the car and Sophia in vivid, biased detail. He added that she was the maid's daughter and clearly didn't belong in such a vehicle, implying a calculated exploitation of an elderly man. He made sure to emphasize the car's value, painting a picture of a serious crime. The police dispatch unit, receiving the report of a high-value vehicle being stolen, took the call seriously. They dispatched a patrol unit to intercept the Rolls-Royce, taking the caller's distress and the description of the valuable car as sufficient reason for an immediate response. They took down the description of the car and the driver and put out an alert. Meanwhile, as Sophia drove Mr. Henderson to his event, they were completely oblivious to the dramatic events unfolding behind them. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and the vintage car hummed along smoothly. They chatted about Mr. Henderson's upcoming event, about Sophia's studies, and about a book they had both recently read. They were enjoying their conversation and the peaceful ride. Sophia felt a sense of pride as she navigated the familiar streets, ensuring Mr. Henderson's comfort. He, in turn, felt a quiet contentment, enjoying the company of a young woman he considered family. Back on their cul-de-sac, the Davises felt a profound sense of triumph. They believed they had prevented a crime, protected an elderly neighbor, and upheld the unspoken rules of their affluent community. They patted themselves on the back for their vigilance, convinced they were the heroes of the day. They imagined the police apprehending Sophia, the Rolls-Royce being returned, and Mr. Henderson finally being saved from the clutches of those they deemed unworthy. They waited, their eyes glued to the street, for the inevitable flashing lights and the return of the stolen car, confident in their actions and their judgment. They had done their part, or so they believed. The serene hum of the Rolls-Royce was suddenly shattered by the piercing wail of a siren. Sophia, startled, glanced in the rearview mirror. A police cruiser, lights flashing, was directly behind them. Her heart skipped a beat. She pulled over to the side of the road, her mind racing. She had been driving carefully, well within the speed limit. What could possibly be wrong? As the patrol car pulled up behind them, two officers emerged, their expressions serious. They approached the Rolls-Royce, one on each side, their hands resting near their holsters. The sight sent a shiver down Sophia's spine. "License and registration, please," the officer on her side requested, his voice firm. Sophia fumbled for her wallet, her hands trembling slightly. "Is everything all right, officer? Have I done something wrong?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Mr. Henderson, who had been enjoying the ride, looked between Sophia and the officers with a puzzled expression. "What's going on here?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. He saw the doubt in the officers' eyes as they looked at Sophia, then at the luxurious car. "We received a report of a stolen vehicle, sir," the other officer stated, looking directly at Mr. Henderson. "And a description of the driver." "Stolen vehicle?" The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. Her confusion quickly turned to fear. Her eyes darted to Mr. Henderson, who was now straightening up in his seat, a look of disbelief spreading across his face. "Stolen?" Mr. Henderson repeated, his voice rising slightly. "This car is not stolen. This is my car, and Sophia is driving me at my request." He tried to project an air of authority, but the situation was so absurd, it was difficult to maintain composure. The officers exchanged a glance. The report had been quite specific. A young woman, fitting Sophia's description, driving a Rolls-Royce, having allegedly taken it from an elderly gentleman. They had a job to do. "We understand, sir," the first officer said, his tone still skeptical. "But we need to verify this. Can we see your identification, ma'am, and the vehicle's registration?" Sophia handed over her driver's license. She felt a wave of humiliation wash over her. It was clear the officers were not believing Mr. Henderson's explanation, at least not yet. She could feel the weight of their suspicion, the unspoken accusation in their gaze. Mr. Henderson, seeing the officers' continued skepticism, felt his disbelief quickly morph into righteous anger. "There is no theft here," he declared, his voice now firm and clear. "Sophia is like a granddaughter to me. She has been driving me for years, and today is no different. She is taking me to an important engagement." He looked at Sophia, then back at the officers. "She is a trusted, honorable young woman. This is an outrageous accusation." The officer, still holding Sophia's license, squinted at the address. The caller mentioned the car was being taken from a residence on Elm Street. Is that correct, sir? Elm Street. The Davises. The realization dawned on Mr. Henderson, swift and sharp. His jaw tightened. He had noticed their nosy behavior, their constant watching, but he never imagined it would come to this. Yes, that is correct, he said, his voice now laced with a cold edge. And I have a strong suspicion who made this utterly false report. Sophia, meanwhile, felt her cheeks burn. Passers-by were slowing down, craning their necks to look at the scene. The flashing lights, the police officers, the vintage Rolls-Royce. It was drawing a crowd. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and deeply, terribly humiliated. Even though Mr. Henderson was vehemently defending her, the accusation hung in the air, a dark cloud over her. She knew she had done nothing wrong, but the stares, the whispers from the curious onlookers, made her feel like a criminal. She gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady herself. Mr. Henderson, noticing Sophia's distress, turned to the officers. You are causing undue distress to this young woman, based on a malicious and baseless accusation, he stated, his voice now booming with authority. I demand that you verify my ownership of this vehicle, and then I want to know who made this false report. I intend to take action. The officers, sensing the genuine anger in Mr. Henderson's voice, and perhaps recognizing his demeanor as that of a respected individual, began to shift their stance. They quickly ran the license and registration through their system. The results confirmed Mr. Henderson's ownership and Sophia's valid driver's license. The report of a stolen vehicle was clearly erroneous. All right, Mr. Henderson, the first officer said, his tone now apologetic. It appears there's been a mistake. The vehicle is registered to you, and Ms. Rodriguez has a valid license. We apologize for the inconvenience. He handed Sophia's license back to her. We'll need to follow up on this false report. A mistake? Mr. Henderson scoffed. This was no mistake. This was a deliberate act of prejudice and defamation. You tell me who made that call. They need to be held accountable for this. His gaze was steely. This young woman has been subjected to public humiliation, and I will not stand for it. The officers, now looking genuinely uncomfortable, confirmed that the call had indeed come from a residence on Elm Street, matching the Davises' address. They explained that they would have to investigate the false report, but assured Mr. Henderson and Sophia that they were free to go. The flashing lights were turned off, and the officers retreated to their cruiser, leaving Sophia and Mr. Henderson in the sudden jarring quiet. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the sting of their curious stares lingered. Sophia felt a deep ache in her chest, a mixture of relief and profound hurt. Mr. Henderson, however, was no longer merely angry. He was absolutely enraged. He knew exactly what had happened, and he knew exactly who was responsible. Mr. Henderson didn't waste a second. He turned to Sophia, his expression firm. Sophia, my dear, we are not going to that event. We are going straight back to Elm Street, to the Davises' house. His voice was low, but it held an undeniable command. Sophia, still reeling from the police stop, nodded silently. She understood. Mr. Henderson wasn't just angry, he was on a mission. She put the Rolls-Royce in gear and made a U-turn, heading back towards their neighborhood. The drive felt different now. The beautiful car, which moments ago had been a symbol of a pleasant outing, now felt like a battle tank, carrying them into a confrontation. Sophia could feel her hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel, but a new kind of resolve was building within her. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about standing up for what was right. Back on Elm Street, Mrs. Davis was practically glued to her living room window. She had seen the police lights in the distance, heard the faint wail of sirens. As the Rolls-Royce, now without police escort, turned onto their street, a smug smile spread across her face. "See, I told you, John," she called out to her husband, who was pretending to read the newspaper. "They caught her. Probably took her straight to jail. Good riddance." Mr. Davis grunted in agreement, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. They both imagined Sophia, looking distraught, perhaps even in handcuffs, being led away. They had saved Mr. Henderson, and in their minds, validated their own superior judgment. They watched with keen interest as the Rolls-Royce pulled up not to Mr. Henderson's driveway, but directly in front of their own house. Their smugness quickly evaporated. Mr. Henderson, his face a mask of controlled fury, emerged from the passenger side. Sophia, looking pale but determined, stepped out from the driver's seat. Mr. Henderson walked with purpose towards their front door, his cane hitting the pavement with a decisive tap. He didn't bother with the doorbell. He rapped on the door with his knuckles, a sharp, insistent sound that echoed through their quiet street. Mrs. Davis jumped, startled. "What in the world?" she muttered, her eyes wide. Mr. Davis slowly lowered his newspaper, his confident air suddenly deflating. They exchanged a nervous glance before Mrs. Davis hesitantly opened the door, just a crack. Mr. Henderson didn't wait for an invitation. He pushed the door open wider and stepped inside, Sophia right behind him. The Davises were taken completely by surprise, their faces displaying a mixture of shock and dawning horror. They had expected to see the police, maybe a grateful Mr. Henderson, but certainly not him, looking utterly livid, with Sophia by his side. "Mr. Henderson, what a surprise!" Mrs. Davis stammered, trying to regain her composure, her voice thin and forced. Mr. Davis simply stood there, speechless. Mr. Henderson fixed them with a stare that could curdle milk. His voice, though not raised, was cold and precise, cutting through the thin air of their living room. "Don't bother with the pleasantries, Mrs. Davis. I know you called the police. I know you accused Sophia, my dear Sophia, of stealing my car." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And let me tell you, your baseless assumptions, your prejudice, led to a deeply humiliating and unjust experience for this young woman." Mrs. Davis flinched as if struck. "Oh, Mr. Henderson, we were just concerned for you," she began, her voice a reedy whine. "It looks so suspicious, a young woman like her, driving such a car. We thought she was taking advantage of you. You being, well, you know." Her eyes flickered toward Sophia with a barely concealed disdain. Mr. Davis finally found his voice. "Yes, sir. We were just trying to protect you. It's a very valuable car, and she's Elena's daughter. It just didn't seem right." Sophia clenched her fists, but Mr. Henderson raised a hand, silencing her without a word. He looked from Mr. Davis to Mrs. Davis, his expression unyielding. "Protect me?" he scoffed, a dry, bitter sound. "You didn't protect me. You subjected an innocent person to public shame because of your own narrow-mindedness and class prejudice." He took a deep breath, and his voice dropped to a level that commanded absolute attention. "And since you are so concerned about who drives my car, let me make something perfectly clear." The Davises leaned forward, a flicker of hope in their eyes that perhaps Mr. Henderson would finally see reason and confirm their biases. "This Rolls-Royce," Mr. Henderson declared, his gaze sweeping over them both, "is no longer just my car." He paused for dramatic effect, and Sophia looked at him, confused. I have decided, after years of unwavering loyalty, dedication, and genuine care from both Elena and Sophia, to gift this car to Sophia." The words hung in the air, a bombshell dropping into their meticulously ordered, prejudiced world. The Davises' faces, which moments ago held a blend of defensiveness and self-righteousness, went completely blank. Their jaws literally dropped. Their eyes widened, their complexions paling, as the full weight of Mr. Henderson's statement hit them. The car they had seen as a symbol of their own aspirations, the car they believed Sophia was stealing, or didn't deserve, was now hers, legally and irrevocably. "It's an early graduation present," Mr. Henderson continued, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor in his voice, but his eyes were firm. "A token of my appreciation for her and her mother's years of service, friendship, and care. I wanted her to get comfortable driving it before the official transfer of title, which, by the way, is happening next week." The Davises were completely, utterly speechless, their mouths opened and closed like fish out of water. All their carefully constructed assumptions, their judgments based on appearance and social standing, crumbled around them. They had accused the rightful owner of theft, and not just any owner, but a young woman they had openly looked down upon. Sophia, though still feeling the sting of the earlier events, now stood a little taller. She didn't gloat, didn't offer a triumphant smile. Instead, she looked at the Davises with a gaze that held a mix of sadness for their prejudice and a quiet, dignified strength. The humiliation she had felt earlier began to recede, replaced by a profound sense of validation and gratitude towards Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson then stepped closer to the Davises, his voice now filled with a cold finality. "Your actions today have not protected me. They have caused irreparable damage to Sophia and to any semblance of neighborly relations we might have had. This was not a mistake born of concern, but an act rooted in prejudice. And some things, Mr. and Mrs. Davis, cannot be easily forgiven." He turned, a signal to Sophia that their business here was done. Without another word, he walked out of their house, Sophia following, leaving the Davises standing in their living room, stunned into a silence that was far heavier than any shouted accusation. Their world, and their standing in the neighborhood, had just irrevocably shifted. Word of the Davises' very public humiliation spread through the quiet cul-de-sac like wildfire. It wasn't just the police cars and the loud confrontation. It was Mr. Henderson's booming voice, the undeniable truth of his words, and the sheer audacity of the Davises' prejudiced assumptions that fueled the gossip. Neighbors who had previously nodded politely to the Davises, perhaps even entertained their subtle digs about Elena and Sophia, now looked at them with a mixture of pity and disdain. The Davises, once at the top of their self-proclaimed social hierarchy, became pariahs almost overnight. Suddenly, their meticulously manicured lawn seemed a little less green, their expensive cars a little less impressive. Small talk at the community mailbox became awkward silences. Invitations to neighborhood barbecues mysteriously stopped arriving. Mrs. Davis, who once prided herself on being the unofficial social arbiter of the cul-de-sac, found herself completely isolated. Her phone, which usually buzzed with gossip and social arrangements, remained stubbornly silent. Mr. Davis, too, felt the sting of ostracization. His golf buddies suddenly had prior engagements and business connections, who lived in the same affluent area, seemed to avoid eye contact at the local country club. The social capital they had worked so hard to accumulate had evaporated, replaced by a thick cloud of judgment. Mr. Henderson, true to his word, made it unequivocally clear where he stood. When asked by curious neighbors, he didn't mince words. Their actions were born of prejudice, not concern, he'd say, his voice firm. Sophia and Elena are family to me, and their character is beyond reproach. What the Davises did was unforgivable. His words carried immense weight in the community. He was a respected elder, a man of integrity, and his endorsement of Sophia and Elena only deepened the chasm between the Davises and everyone else. His quiet dignity in the face of their accusations stood in stark contrast to their petty prejudice, making their guilt all the more apparent. Elena, upon hearing the full, dramatic retelling of the event from Sophia, was a whirlwind of emotions. Her initial shock quickly gave way to a deep, burning anger at the injustice Sophia had endured. The thought that her daughter, a bright and hard-working young woman, had been accused of theft simply because of who she was, because of her background, was infuriating. But beneath the anger, there was also a profound sense of gratitude towards Mr. Henderson. His unwavering belief in Sophia, his public defense of her, and the incredible gift of the Rolls-Royce solidified their already strong bond. She hugged Sophia tightly, tears in her eyes, proud of her daughter's composure and resilience. Sophia, however, was still processing it all. The vindication felt good, but the experience of being falsely accused, of seeing the raw prejudice in the Davises' eyes, left a lasting mark. She found herself replaying the police stop, the officer's initial skepticism, the public humiliation. It was a strange mix of emotions. Immense gratitude for Mr. Henderson's kindness, relief that the truth came out, but also a deep-seated resentment towards the Davises for their baseless assumptions. She understood that their actions weren't just a mistake. They were a reflection of a deeper, uglier prejudice. The incident, while ending in her favor, had exposed a harsh reality about how some people viewed those they deemed different or less than. As the days turned into weeks, the Davises grew increasingly desperate. They tried to fix things, to mend the broken social fabric. Mrs. Davis baked a pie and left it on Mr. Henderson's doorstep, with a handwritten card expressing deepest regrets for the misunderstanding. Mr. Henderson simply left the pie untouched, visible from their window, until it was eventually thrown away. Mr. Davis tried to catch Elena at the grocery store, mumbling an apology that sounded more like a self-defense. Elena simply walked past him, her head held high, without a word. They even attempted to approach Sophia directly, but she politely but firmly told them she had nothing to say. Their apologies, belated and clearly motivated by their social downfall, were perceived as utterly insincere. They weren't sorry for their prejudice. They were sorry for the consequences of their prejudice. Mr. Henderson, with his characteristic quiet strength, continued to refuse their attempts at reconciliation. He believed in accountability, and their actions had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed with a simple sorry. He maintained that some wounds, especially those inflicted by prejudice, ran too deep for superficial apologies. The Davises were left to grapple with the full weight of their actions. The incident forced them to look inward, to confront the biases they had harbored, biases they had perhaps never even acknowledged, until they were so brutally exposed. Their pride was deeply wounded, not just by the social rejection, but by the realization that their judgments had been so spectacularly wrong, so utterly misplaced. They had believed themselves superior, only to be revealed as small-minded and cruel. The neighborhood, too, underwent a subtle but significant shift. The incident served as a stark, painful reminder about judging others based on appearance, class, or background. Conversations became more mindful, less prone to casual gossip. There was a renewed appreciation for kindness and respect, and a quiet, collective understanding that true worth had nothing to do with the size of one's house or the make of their car. The Davises, once a prominent fixture, were now a cautionary tale, a living example of the bitter taste of prejudice. Their presence became a constant, uncomfortable reminder of the community's recent upheaval, and their social exile became a silent yet powerful testament to the neighborhood's collective disapproval. The day finally came for the official transfer of the Rolls-Royce. Mr. Henderson, with a gentle smile, handed Sophia the keys and the signed title. It wasn't a grand ceremony, but a quiet, heartfelt moment in his study, with Elena beaming proudly beside her daughter. He told Sophia that the car was not just a gift, but a symbol of his faith in her, a reminder of her hard work, and a testament to the fact that kindness and integrity always win in the end. Sophia, tears welling in her eyes, hugged him tightly. It was more than just a car. It was a future, a tangible representation of a belief in her potential that had changed her life. She promised him she would cherish it and use it to make him proud. Sophia took to driving the Rolls-Royce with a quiet confidence. She treated it with the utmost respect, meticulously cleaning and maintaining it, just as Mr. Henderson had always done. It wasn't about showing off, but about honoring the gift and the man who gave it to her. She used it for practical things, driving to her university classes, taking Elena to appointments, and sometimes just for a serene drive to clear her head. The car became a familiar sight in the neighborhood, a constant, elegant presence that spoke volumes without a single word. Sophia excelled in her studies, her determination fueled by Mr. Henderson's unwavering encouragement and the desire to prove that his trust in her was well placed. She was on track to graduate with honors, her dreams of a successful career within her grasp. The Rolls-Royce, once a symbol of Mr. Henderson's past, was now a testament to Sophia's bright future, a powerful engine driving her forward. Meanwhile, the Davises found their world shrinking. The once vibrant social life they had cultivated in the cul-de-sac withered away. Invitations to neighborhood barbecues stopped coming. Casual waves from across the street became rare. When they did encounter a neighbor, conversations were brief, polite, and devoid of any warmth. Their attempts to engage were met with blank stares or quick excuses. They were no longer the new, impressive couple. They were the Davises, the ones who had called the police on a kind old man's protege. Their house, once a beacon of their perceived success, now felt like an isolated island in a sea of unspoken disapproval. Their once meticulously maintained lawn started to show signs of neglect, a subtle reflection of their internal turmoil. The social ostracization began to have more tangible effects. Mr. Davis, a real estate agent, found that his usual network of referrals had dried up. Potential clients, hearing whispers about his character, chose to work with others. Deals that seemed certain suddenly fell through. His reputation, once spotless in his professional circles, was now subtly tarnished. Mrs. Davis, too, experienced a similar chill in her volunteer work. Her suggestions were politely ignored, her leadership roles quietly reassigned. Their financial stability, once a source of pride, began to feel less secure as their income dwindled and their social standing plummeted. The grand house they had so proudly purchased now felt like a gilded cage, a constant reminder of their downfall. Unable to cope with the relentless, quiet judgment, the Davises eventually made a decision. They put their house on the market. The for sale sign that appeared on their manicured lawn was a silent admission of defeat. They tried to sell it quickly, but the market was slow, and their tarnished reputation, though never explicitly stated, seemed to hang in the air like a heavy cloud. They struggled to find a buyer, and when they finally did, it was for less than they had hoped. The once proud presence they had established in the neighborhood was now reduced to a symbol of their spectacular misjudgment and subsequent downfall. They packed their belongings in silence. Their grand plans for a perfect life in the affluent suburb shattered. They left as quietly as they could, their departure marking a closure to the uncomfortable chapter they had opened in the community. Elena, through it all, remained a constant, steadfast presence in Mr. Henderson's life. Their bond, forged over years of shared trust and mutual respect, had only deepened during the ordeal. She continued to manage his household, her loyalty unwavering, her gratitude for his generosity towards Sophia immense. Mr. Henderson, in turn, found immense peace and satisfaction in seeing Sophia thrive. He would often watch her drive off in the Rolls-Royce, a proud smile on his face, knowing he had made the right decision. He had not only given a young woman a car, but had also given her wings. The neighborhood, having weathered the storm, slowly began to heal. The Davises' departure was like a breath of fresh air, allowing the community to move past the uncomfortable tension they had created. The incident served as a powerful, lingering lesson about the dangers of prejudice and the importance of looking beyond superficial appearances. It fostered a renewed sense of community, one built on genuine respect and understanding, rather than on social hierarchies. Sophia, having faced prejudice head-on and emerged stronger, was now truly empowered. The experience had taught her invaluable lessons about resilience, integrity, and the enduring power of kindness. She understood that true worth came from character, not from possessions or social status. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, a testament to her journey. The Rolls-Royce was more than just a car. It was a constant reminder of the incredible generosity of spirit, the unexpected kindness, and the triumph over adversity. Time, as it always does, continued its steady march forward, carrying with it the echoes of past events and the promise of new beginnings. A few years had passed since the incident with the Davises, enough time for wounds to heal, for lessons to sink in, and for new chapters to unfold. Sophia, the bright and determined young woman who had once been the target of baseless accusations, had flourished. She had graduated with honors, her academic achievements a testament to her hard work and Mr. Henderson's unwavering belief in her. Now, she was pursuing her dreams, perhaps establishing a successful career in a field she loved, her future as bright and open as the road ahead. The Rolls-Royce, that magnificent vintage automobile, remained a cherished possession for Sophia. It wasn't merely a vehicle for her. It was a powerful, tangible symbol of resilience, of unexpected kindness, and of the triumph over prejudice. She maintained it meticulously, just as Mr. Henderson had always done, ensuring its classic beauty and perfect working order. Every time she drove it, she felt a connection to the man who had given her so much more than just a car. It was a reminder of how one act of generosity could ripple through a life, changing its course in profound and beautiful ways. Mr. Henderson, though perhaps a little frailer with each passing year, continued to be a beloved and respected figure in the community. His quiet generosity, his wisdom, and his unwavering moral compass had left an indelible mark on everyone who knew him. He took immense joy in Sophia's accomplishments, his eyes twinkling with pride whenever she shared news of her successes. He had lived a full life, and seeing Sophia thrive, knowing he had played a part in her journey, brought him a deep and abiding contentment. His legacy was not just in his achievements or his possessions, but in the lives he had touched, particularly Sophia's. The Davises, on the other hand, had largely faded into obscurity. Their grand house had been sold, their presence in the neighborhood erased, leaving behind only a faint memory. They had become a cautionary tale, whispered occasionally among neighbors, a stark reminder of the consequences of judgment and prejudice. Their attempts to build a life founded on superficial appearances had crumbled, leaving them with nothing but the bitter taste of their own folly. Their downfall served as a powerful, if unfortunate, lesson for the entire community. Sophia, remembering Mr. Henderson's profound kindness and generosity, always sought ways to pay it forward. She understood the immense power of a helping hand, a kind word, or a simple act of belief in someone. She actively volunteered in her community, mentoring younger students, particularly those who faced similar challenges or who felt marginalized. Sometimes she would even use the Rolls-Royce for charitable events, driving children to school events, or taking elderly residents on nostalgic trips. It wasn't about showing off. It was about sharing the joy and the story behind the car, inspiring others with the tale of how kindness could overcome adversity. The car, once a symbol of elitism in the Davises' eyes, had been transformed into a beacon of hope and generosity under Sophia's care. The unseen impact of Mr. Henderson's kindness was truly remarkable. His simple act of trust, his willingness to stand up for what was right, had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond Sophia's life. It had taught a community a valuable lesson about empathy, understanding, and the dangers of judging people based on superficial appearances or social status. It had shown everyone that true wealth lay not in material possessions, but in the richness of human connection and the courage to defeat shallow prejudice. The incident, though painful at the time, had ultimately strengthened the fabric of the neighborhood, fostering a deeper sense of community and mutual respect. One sunny afternoon, years after the Davises had left, Sophia drove the Rolls-Royce down the familiar tree-lined street. She was dressed elegantly, but simply, her posture radiating quiet confidence and success. As she turned into Mr. Henderson's driveway, a gentle smile played on her lips. She wasn't just driving a beautiful car. She was embodying the very essence of her journey. The Rolls-Royce, gleaming in the sunlight, was a testament not just to her own hard work and perseverance, but to the extraordinary man who had believed in her when others had not. It was a symbol of gratitude, a legacy of love, and a powerful reminder that kindness, in its purest form, always finds a way to triumph. The image of Sophia, composed and successful, driving the car, was the final, perfect chapter in a story of human connection triumphing over prejudice, a story that would continue to inspire for generations to come.